to. And it's at a time when this week especially, we have a lot to be concerned about. There's a lot we're working on. As House Republicans, we're working to fight for American families, to help improve their lives, help lower drug costs, help address some of the problems that they're confronting. And it's an unfortunate, very disappointing contrast with what you're seeing Speaker Pelosi do with her majority. And let's start first with USMCA, because this is something that we've been working on since President Trump took office, when he said that he would make NAFTA better for American families, that he would actually go and negotiate a better trade deal with Mexico and Canada to open up more opportunities. Right now, a lot of products that we make in America, we can't sell in Canada. We can't sell in Mexico. And under the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, we open those doors up and we create more jobs, over 160,000 more jobs for American workers, higher wages for American workers, and the ability to sell our products. But even more than that, what it does is sends a message to the rest of the world. There are a lot of friends of ours around the world. You see it with Japan. You see it with the United Kingdom. So many other countries want to have better trade relationships with the United States. But until USMCA can get done, they don't believe that they can actually go and negotiate a deal with America until they see that we can actually get the agreement with our neighbors from the north and south put into law. So the fact that we're going to finally get a vote on USMCA is a big win for those American workers. But also then it sends a message to China. And everybody knows, not just in America, but all of our friends around the world that know that China doesn't play by the same rules and that they have to come into line with the rest of the world. And they haven't needed to, because nobody stood up to him until President Trump finally stood up for America, but also for our allies all around the world, at saying China is going to have to play by those same rules. And getting USMCA passed also sends that message to China that if they want to be a part of the greatest and hottest economy in the world, which is the United States economy, they're going to have to play by those rules too. So getting USMCA moved through has been a top priority of ours. I set up a whip team just specifically for USMCA. This morning, Chairman Brady and myself hosted a call with Ambassador Lighthizer where he laid out those details, and we talked about how important it is for American workers, for the president to get this done, and hopefully it gets done quickly. Should have been done a long time ago, but again, as we've seen with Speaker Pelosi, she, instead of using her majority to focus on things like lowering drug prices, which we've got a great bill, H.R. 19, that would lower drug prices, that only includes bipartisan legislation, not a partisan approach, something that can't get signed into law, but ideas that actually bring Republicans and Democrats together. We've worked on this incredibly hard for months to get an agreement between Republicans and Democrats to lower drug prices, something that can get signed into law by the president, something that would actually work for families that expect Congress to work for them, families that are struggling with the high cost of drug prices. And they know that there's a better approach, and we bring those approaches in H.R. 19, a really important piece of legislation that I hope Speaker Pelosi would bring to the floor instead of the partisan approaches that she's been taking. And finally, when you look at what she really has done with this majority, that is from day one when she became Speaker, she made it very clear that the most radical elements of her base who didn't want to work with this president, but they wanted to overturn the results of the 2016 election, and so they were committed to impeaching him, regardless of the facts. That's been going on from day one that Speaker Pelosi took that gavel. And today, unfortunately, she bowed down to the most radical elements of her base instead of standing up to them and saying that she was going to work for the American people. By bringing articles of impeachment after years of investigations, with the Mueller investigation being the linchpin, what they thought was going to be the thing that delivered something to impeach the president on, and it didn't. There was no violation. The only collusion that happened where Russia tried to interfere with our election was when Barack Obama was president. That's when Russia tried to interfere with our election. Why Barack Obama and Joe Biden aren't being asked why they didn't stand up to Russia and stop them from interfering in our election is a really good question that's not being asked. But President Trump has stood up to Russia on so many accounts. President Trump stood up to Russia with our ally Ukraine and still is standing with Ukraine against Russia when he sold the Javelin missiles that President Zelensky, on that now infamous call, thanked President Trump for doing, giving Ukraine the tools that they need to stand up against Russia. All the times that the Democrats brought witness after witness that were supposed to be the star witness, they were asked, by our members point blank. Can you name an impeachable offense? Not one. Can you name any count of bribery? Not one. Yet they still go forward with impeachment, not because there's evidence, which is what the constitutional standard should be, but because they're afraid he will get reelected. And time after time, you've heard Democrats in this House say exactly that. They're not impeaching the president because they can list an impeachable offense. They're impeaching him because they're afraid he will get reelected. That's not why you have the power of impeachment. That's the abuse of power. Speaker Pelosi, Adam Schiff, and her counterparts have been abusing the power of impeachment because they're afraid Donald Trump will get reelected on his own. The American people should be the ones that decide who the president is, not Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff, because they disagree with the results of the 2016 election. It's going to be a low mark in Congress when you see what they've done to the standard of impeachment. Turning it instead of what it's always been is a unique power of Congress to hold the president accountable if they violate a law, and instead now using it against a president because they're afraid he will get reelected on his own. That's something that she's ultimately going to have to account for. Again, you've seen a lot of her own colleagues trying to find an off-ramp, trying to say, let's get away from impeachment. But she couldn't stand up to the most radical elements of our conference. And make no mistake, they wouldn't be talking about this if they felt confident in their field of candidates. More and more Democrats are talking about getting in the race for president to this day. But ultimately, they ought to trust the American people with the election and not still try to reverse the results of the last election. That's what impeachment was supposed to be for, but not an impeachable offense. And keep in mind, Zelensky never did the investigation and got the money. Zelensky himself said there was no pressure applied, and that's the basis for them impeaching a president. I think people know what's really going on here. They know this is all about politics, and they've seen the abuse of power. Last week, Adam Schiff spying on members of the press, subpoenaing phone records of journalists. We don't know how many. I asked anywhere at the colloquy last week, can you tell me how many journalists Adam Schiff was spying on? He couldn't answer that. How many members of Congress is he spying on, or other citizens across this country? And they can't even answer a basic question like that. We all should be alarmed at how they've abused their power with this majority in Congress. And it's a shame, because there's a lot more we should be doing that families across this country are counting on us to do, like lower drug prices. At least as House Republicans, we're going to stay focused on fighting hard for those families across America who are counting on us and working with President Trump to go deliver more wins for American workers and the American economy. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy.
Thank you, Steve.
Good morning. You know, back in 2016, the Democrats called those who supported Donald Trump deplorables. And now they're trying to disqualify their votes. Democrats still cannot get over the fact that the president won the election and they lost. Just last week at this podium, Nancy Pelosi went to point out that they created a timeline to impeach President Trump that she said started 2.5 years ago. Many of you know of this timeline because once they took the majority, they had to decide who would become chairs of their committee. The impeachment committee of the judiciary, who could win? Jerry Nadler campaigned on that he would be the very strongest member to lead a potential impeachment. On the day of swearing in these new freshmen that gave him the majority, a mere few hours after being sworn in, Congresswoman Tlaib proclaimed, "We are going to impeach the mother." You had Al Green admitting that the Democrats have true fears if they do not impeach President Trump that he would win re-election. And now and today, we watched them introduce 2 articles of impeachment. They changed the course of Congress to take away due process for any point of where we are. It is the fear that Alexander Hamilton had that came to fruition in this Congress. I just hope no Congress ever repeats what we're going through today. They have a lot of members on their side very concerned, because from the moment they started impeachment and letting the American public see what they believed and keep changing the term of what they thought was out there, it has been falling in the polls. If you need any more evidence of how unpopular impeachment is, watch the 2 press conferences today. After announcing impeachment within less than an hour, the Speaker finally relented and said she would bring USMCA up. She has held it for more than a year, making America weaker in our negotiations with China. Our number one and number two trader, Mexico and Canada, was being held up within our own agreement. But those who are vulnerable in this vote for impeachment continuing to make the argument, as the rest of America was too. At no time when she would bring this bill up would there ever fear of it not passing. But the only reason she would finally relented is because of the unpopularity of impeachment itself. We watched in a hearing a Democrat constitutional scholar that did not vote for President Trump say this was the weakest, the thinnest, the fastest impeachment in the history of America. He then went to say if there was an abuse, it'd be abuse on the Democrats to move forward. The Speaker must not have listened to that hearing. If the Speaker had only waited 48 hours to release of the transcript, America would not be put through this nightmare. If the Speaker would pause and read the IG report, the Inspector General, to thank in a place of America that we would have a law enforcement agency spy on a presidential campaign in more than 51 instances, not hold up to the rule of law or change all the information and evidence to be able to move forward on something they knew or should have known was not true, is a sad day for America. But to compound that with the idea just because you created a timeline to impeach a president that you disliked, you ignored facts. We would never be here if they paid attention to the facts or the hearings. This is not a day that America will be proud about. It's not a day that history will write that anybody wants to repeat. Alexander Hamilton warned us that this day would come, that a majority would use their political power just for politics, even though we all raise our hands to uphold the Constitution. I just hope no Congress, no regardless who's in the majority, will ever take us down this path again. We have such great potential in this nation, but to have wasted a majority on this is an embarrassment to this Congress. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Does it make it harder to defend the president when his personal attorney is still traveling to Ukraine, investigating his campaign rivals, and claims he wants to give some sort of presentation about it to Congress?
It is not hard to defend this president, surely on the facts of what's out there. I think it's hard for the Democrats to move forward when they start with a quid pro quo to bribery to every other element they go. It's hard for the Democrats to continue this when the people they bring forth in their hearings are pretty much donors. Their expert witnesses, when it comes to their scholars, were donors to presidential campaigns. The idea that they're going to change the course of history, that staff is going to interview staff, and then they're going to come out with articles of impeachment. What power do members of Congress who run to represent their districts have that they take it away? The idea that Democrats would control who can ask questions inside a hearing or how the structure would go. That's an embarrassment. So no, it is not difficult to defend this president because this president did nothing that's impeachable. It's hard to defend Democrats on how they're running this House and what they're doing inside their majority. That's the difficulty that I have.
But
yes, question.
But it's appropriate for Giuliani to do what he's doing.
He's an individual citizen. That is not the question that we have before us. It's about impeachment. You've got to understand what impeachment means. Impeachment is the removal of the highest elected person in this land. I don't care if you think Americans who support President Trump are deplorables, but you do not have the right to disqualify their vote just because you do not like President Trump. We are a nation of law. And the idea that they would use their power, they would lie, and they would continue to lie just because they dislike this president. They would change the course of history where they would move it from judiciary into the Intel Committee. They would disallow individuals to even ask questions. They would disallow the president to have due process to ask a question. They would not allow a minority to have witnesses. And they're proud about that? The idea of a vote of impeachment, the only higher vote I think we'd have a member of Congress is whether we send women or men out to war. But the way they have handled this from the very beginning, I know they set a timeline and they wanted to keep to their timeline. They just never paid attention to the facts. So they changed the rules to meet their timeline. They may think it's not important, but it goes to the sheer fact of the country of who we are. One of our greatest strengths is the rule of law. Other countries admire us because we believe in the rule of law. We believe in due process. But not in Nancy Pelosi's house when she becomes Speaker. She has weighed and hinged her entire majority on the impeachment of the president. When she selected Adam Schiff to be the Intel chair and kept him there after he lied to the American public that he had proof beyond circumstantial. When we walked down through a nightmare, spent millions of dollars, went to 14 different countries and found that was a lie, you had an inspector general just give you a report yesterday to show that a law enforcement agency spied on a presidential campaign. And when they couldn't get their own facts, they changed it to go to a secret court in FISA to try to spy further. They based that all on something that the Democratic Party spent money on that was a lie to try to discredit somebody running for office. I would have used the majority to clean that up, to go back to the rule of law. I would not use the majority simply for your own political gain. And if you can't meet your timeline, change all the rules that this history has ever seen. So no, it is not difficult to defend this president, but it is very difficult to defend this Congress on what they have done, and history will not be kind to them.
So the Democrats say that they are defending the rule of law and doing their constitutional duty because the Constitution, the proper role of the president. They say this president, on that call, asked a foreign government to announce an investigation by name of his political rivals. So I'd just like to get each of you on the record. Do you agree with the president that that call was perfect? That's what we want presidents to do.
The question we have before us, is that call impeachable? Even their own witnesses.
Perfect.
You asked the question, please let me answer. Thank you. We are members of Congress. We're going to take a vote on 2 articles of impeachment. We're not going to take a vote on whether a call is perfect, because that's not what's before us. You may think impeachment's not important, but it hinges not only on our nation, but what the rest of the world is going to look at from an idea of who we are. See, I simply believe that America is more than a country. America is an idea. An idea so powerful that millions in Hong Kong will rise up for the idea of the freedoms, what we say we behold. The idea that these individuals in the majority, they got the transcript of a phone call, made a president do that only made our nation weaker in our defense. Because to tell me what other foreign leader is going to be open and honest with whoever is sitting in the Oval Office. But they did that because they said they had a whistleblower they did not know, but the head of the Intel Committee actually met with the whistleblower. They started this all on the idea that the administration would not allow the whistleblower to come forward. We saw all the Sunday shows. We saw all of what Adam Schiff said, that he's going to fight so hard to allow that whistleblower to come forward. He is the only one who has denied us the whistleblower from coming forward. But anywhere else in a law in America, that if you base something upon a hearsay or an informant, that informant has to come forward, but not in the idea of impeaching this president. Because somehow the rule of law doesn't uphold to him because they think the people who voted for them are deplorable. Nothing on that phone call is wrong. That was a case that has already been opened. The Attorney General was already looking into it. If somebody is an elected official and they did something wrong, but they run for another office, somehow what they did is not wrong anymore. Why do you fall into a trap of an idea when we're talking about the highest elected office in this land and in this entire world? That they're so brazen that they just dislike that they will change the rule of law to impeach him. They just introduced 2 articles, and your question is about, is it perfect? No, the question is it impeachable? And the answer is absolutely no. And even their own witnesses, when asked, name me something that is impeachable, they could not name it. When the American public watched these hearings, the support went further down. They held a press conference at 9 o'clock to announce impeachment, and at 10, she finally relented and yet let USMCA come up. She held it for more than a year. We're negotiating with China. Mexico's our #1 trader. Canada's our second. Why? Because it's another promise that this president made that he kept. It's something no one thought he could do, that he could renegotiate NAFTA and make America stronger. He did it. But again, the Speaker has the power of when it could come up. She held it for more than a year, when every economist said you would create hundreds of thousands of new jobs. She wished we'd go into a recession. But we just had a jobs report that no one thought would happen. Grew by more than 200,000. Where did Canada? They went down. They will not give this president any credit. They are more willing to tear the country down if they could tear this president down. But he's withstood this all. Why? Because he did nothing wrong. And he's not below the law. Yes.
By agreeing to the USMCA, has Nancy Pelosi done Donald Trump a favor?
No, she's actually agreeing to it as she's doing her job. Waiting a year, she has weakened America. We have been in negotiations with China for how long? Would America not be stronger if we had the USMCA agreed to prior to the negotiations with China? Everyone would tell you yes. Why did we have to wait this long to have these many more jobs that are going to be created? Why did we have to wait this long to have the GDP grow? Maybe because she wanted to give as much time as possible before the next election, just to narrow that. We're less than a year away before the election, and just now USMCA came up. Yeah, she's probably very fearful that the president's going to get a lot of credit, because he deserves it, and so does Lighthizer. And Lighthizer showed the professionalism through all of this. Through everything they said about the president, he was professional every single day in this negotiation. The idea that you brought 2 countries outside of America together, and I hope you go back and write the lesson about this, because I believe business schools will study this. It was difficult to get to this agreement, but what did the president do? He showed part of the art of the deal. He then went to Mexico before they even changed governments and got an agreement. Then he brought Canada into it. If you couldn't get them all together at once like he tried, he showed the art of the deal to how to make it happen. It was probably some of the finest negotiations I've seen by this president. And it just shows, if he did not have to spend all this time being investigated, how much greater this country will be and how much greater potential we will have. Thank you very much.